In the latest escalation in the war against whistleblowers that was started by the Obama administration and ramped up by the Trump administration, former NSA employee and drone whistleblower Daniel Hale was arrested a few weeks ago for allegedly leaking classified documents related to the U.S. drone assassination program. It's not clear exactly what documents Hale allegedly leaked, but as someone who is kind of familiar with some of the bombshell revelations to come out about the drone assassination program, I can tell you that this is information that the public has a right to know. This program is basically an extrajudicial assassination list where the intelligence agencies make a kill list and the president signs off on it. It's not clear exactly how someone's name ends up on the kill list, but it's safe to assume that all the CIA would need is some less than reliable intelligence that someone might have a connection to a known or suspected terrorist for their name to appear on that list. This program violates the Due Process Clause of the 5th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution, as well as the Magna Carta, which has some of the oldest, most universally accepted principles of human rights and civil society. The CIA and the president, without a judge, jury, or court proceeding, without the accused ever getting to refute the claims being made, get to unilaterally present evidence accusing someone of something and then decide whether or not that person lives or dies entirely in secret. Do you trust the president and the CIA to always get the bad guy? Do you trust them to always have rock solid evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the target they're going after is guilty of a crime punishable by death? Do you trust them to get it right 100% of the time? If you do, then what do we even need courts or judges or the judicial system for? If the president and the CIA in their superpowers of discernment always know who's guilty and worthy of assassination with 100% accuracy, shouldn't that apply to lesser crimes too? Our justice system, with all its checks and balances, put innocent people behind bars all the time. So let's prevent that by allowing our all-knowing leader to unilaterally decide when anyone is guilty of anything. Then we'll never accidentally put an innocent person behind bars again. You see how ridiculous that sounds, right? That's the type of shit that kings used to do before the Enlightenment, before the Magna Carta, and it was fucking chaos. Which is why we have impartial judges, juries, standards for what evidence is relevant and acceptable, why anyone accused of a crime has a right to defend themselves. The whole process is in place so that one person can't just hand down punishment on who he decides is guilty. Now, this is in no way me pretending like we have a perfect or even equal judicial system. Innocent people get convicted of crimes all the time. But I can tell you for damn sure having some kind of system is better than having a president and his goons unilaterally deciding who lives and dies. So at its most basic level, the assassination program being run by the CIA and the White House is illegal and violates human rights and the basic Enlightenment principles. It was a scandal that this program even existed in the Obama administration, and it's a scandal that is still happening today. That's just my objection to the program on principle. But once you know how this thing is actually manifested, it is literally impossible for anyone to try to make a defense of this program. A few years ago, I believe it was in 2013, the CIA came out with a report, their own report of their own drone assassination program. They found that 90% of the time when these drones drop bombs, they don't hit the intended target. 90% of the time they are killing civilians instead of the people who are on the secretive kill list. That fact alone should have ended the program. I can't think of any activity or profession where you can miss your target 90% of the time and still say you're successful. And mind you, this isn't dropping water balloons or shooting free throws. We're talking about actually killing people. And 90% of the time you're off the mark. Even if you flipped it, and 90% of the time the drones hit the target, I'm still not comfortable with killing civilians 10% of the time. That's one of my main objections to the death penalty, because about 4% of the time people on death row are innocent and didn't commit the crime that they're being executed for. If it was 9-1, the ratio of the CIA hitting their targets, I would still say you need to stop it immediately and reevaluate what you're doing, because it's not acceptable to kill civilians 1 out of 10 times. And the reality is they're doing it 9 out of 10 times. It's hard to call that an accident. All of the countless stories of our drones attacking weddings and graduations and hospitals and schools, but we keep using them. In fact, since Donald Trump came into office, he's increased drone strikes over 430% from the Obama administration. And he's loosened the restrictions so that the CIA and the military have less requirements when it comes to avoiding civilian casualties. So we're doing thousands more drone strikes, and they have to be more inaccurate than they were under the Obama administration. So what are we talking about? 95 our drones are bombing civilians? Which leads me to what this program has actually become. This is a terrorist program. If almost every day we are indiscriminately bombing civilian areas, sometimes killing dozens or hundreds of people at a time, what the fuck else am I supposed to call it? Can you imagine if ISIS or Al-Qaeda was just running around the place detonating bombs every day, killing dozens of people? We would call that terrorism, and we would be right to call it that. So this drone assassination program has turned into state-sponsored terrorism. And our government is actively trying to keep it secret from the American public. So when people with a conscience like Daniel Hale see what's going on and they try to make the public aware of it, what our government is doing with our money in all these countries overseas, they get prosecuted under the Espionage Act and treated like some spies who were selling American secrets. And it was the Obama administration that set this precedent and put this wheel in motion. He prosecuted more people under the Espionage Act than all other presidents combined. And the people that he targeted with the Espionage Act were whistleblowers just like Daniel Hale, people like Chelsea Manning, who exposed war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Edward Snowden, who exposed the illegal mass surveillance that the NSA was doing on all Americans in this country. Those are the people that the US government decides to go after with the full force of the law. But you know who will always be protected? The war criminals, the people who make the kill list, the people who do the torture and order the torture, the people who order illegal airstrikes on hospitals and civilian areas that kill dozens or hundreds of people at a time, the people who order entire cities to be destroyed like what happened in Fallujah and Mosul and in Iraq, the people who lie us into illegal wars for profit that kill countless numbers of civilians. People like Jim Mattis and Gina Haspel and John Bolton and Dick Cheney and Henry Kissinger. With all the bodies that they've racked up, all the blood on their hands, you would think that these people would spend the rest of their life in prison. But of course, that's not the case. They are still welcomed in polite society. Dick Cheney and George W. Bush will still do their media tours once in a while. Sometimes they'll still push a book. Dick Cheney will go out and sell you a book and tell you why we're right to do torture, even though it violates the Constitution and international law and is clearly fucking illegal. They are still given awards. Some of them even got promotions and are in even higher positions of power than they were when they first committed war crimes and violated the Constitution. So it should be clear that our government under Republican and Democratic administrations have made very clear that anyone who exposes the crimes of our government, who expose war crimes, those are the people who we will try to put behind bars for the rest of their life. People who should be regarded as national heroes. Honestly, there needs to be something done to protect whistleblowers, because this is out of hand and has been out of hand for a long time. If it wasn't for these whistleblowers, we would not know so many things about what our government is doing. We would not have known about the bombing campaign, the slaughter of Cambodia. We would not have known about the lies that we were being told about the Vietnam War and the slaughtering of civilians in Vietnam. We would not know about the illegal mass surveillance that the NSA is doing on all Americans. We would not know about this insane, unconstitutional, illegal drone assassination program. We wouldn't have known about the war crimes committed in Iraq and Afghanistan. We would not know about the worldwide torture network that was set up by the CIA and the Bush White House. And our government will turn around and prosecute these people who expose these crimes under the Espionage Act and acting like they're trading U.S. secrets for cash, when in reality what they're doing is calling out the crimes of our government and cases where they are brazenly violating the Constitution and other laws that they were sworn to protect. Going to news outlets to expose bombshell stories on the U.S. government is not the same as taking top secret documents and selling it to the Chinese government or the Russian government. Those are very different things. There are very clear distinctions between the two, and anyone who wants to pretend like they're the same are lying and intentionally distorting facts so that they can come up with some bullshit justification to go after whistleblowers. And another thing, prosecuting someone under the Espionage Act also prevents them from being able to use the defense that they were doing it in the public's interest. Which is why when these people get prosecuted, they almost certainly lose, because they can't make the case that what they were doing was exposing things that the American public had the right to know. Since the Espionage Act is being abused in such a clear way, I don't think the Department of Justice should be able to unilaterally decide when someone gets prosecuted with the Espionage Act. In cases where people like Chelsea Manning and Daniel Ellsberg and Edward Snowden and Daniel Hale clearly steal information and go directly to news outlets to get it to the public, there should be a panel of judges who get provided all the information in question, and they get to decide whether or not that specific case falls under the Espionage Act. Because like I said, to go to a news organization to make something public is a lot different than selling state secrets, and the Department of Justice has proven that they will intentionally act like those two are the same thing and prosecute people under the Espionage Act as a roundabout way to make sure that they can't provide an adequate defense of themselves. So this case of Daniel Hale is an important one. And this war on whistleblowers is crazy because our government is sending a very clear message that if you expose the crimes of our government, we will go after you and we will get you no matter what it takes.